Mark Rollins. Before I go on, if you came here for a certain fight, click on the description below and click on the timestamp links to take you to that fight. Today, we have Jacob, Stuart, and Brandon. Jacob is the president and executive producer of BSU Tonight. Stuart, who I'm meeting for the first time today.
Not really an important role.
Yeah, he's somebody. I think he cleans the stage after we're done or something. I'm not sure. No,
He's tablecloths. That's what I do.
It's what he does. And aren't they beautiful, folks? Aren't they beautiful? Stuart is actually our president of Cardinal Film Fights tonight, but he doesn't pay me, so I feel no obligation to him whatsoever. And Brandon is the president and executive producer, if I'm correct.
Yes, those are my two titles.
Oh, wonderful. Of Real Deal. So, tonight...
Who is undefeated, I might add.
That's the thing going into this fight is that people representing the Real Deal are 2-0 right now, and I intend to make that 3-0. I'm sorry for all the disrespect to my wonderful guest Stuart here. I don't care about you, Jake.
Yeah, I'm sorry to butt in. I know it's the nature of the show, but I feel like I'm very clearly underprepared, being the underdog in this fight, going against the president and a two-time winner. So I'm just excited to be here.
I'm just excited to be here. I'm just having a great time, folks.
He's going to fucking win, watch.
Well, I will say, in the past, a lot of people have actually come in and like, I'm undefeated, and then they get defeated. You know,
like last one?
Yeah, like last week. So it is anyone's game. As always, we have Von Storm as our fact checker over there. You don't really know what he looks like, so I'm going to paint a picture. He kind of looks like... Nah, he doesn't look like anyone. No, he looks like a civet. Google.
He has like Spock's ears, I think.
He does have Spock's ears, kind of.
Yeah,
but Google civet, C-I-V-E-T, and that's what Von Storm looks like. Only he's a person, not an actual
fact check.
civet.
I do not look like a civet.
He does
Just
look
checked.
like a civet. He does look like a civet,
right
folks.
Now. Like, I actually don't know what that is.
Just, put that picture in your mind's eye when you picture Von Storm. And then as our time and scorekeeper, we have Paige over there.
Hey.
So I'm going to explain the format really quick. We have 4 questions, which I have arranged in a random order. Scoring is based by ranking. First place gets 3 points. Second place gets 2 points. Third place gets 1 point, except for the final question where all the point values are doubled. So even until the very end, anyone's got a chance to win it all. The format goes, it starts with a 60-second intro where you state your answer with a brief explanation of why you picked it, followed by a 5-minute forum where you go at each other's throats, tear each other down, tears, blood, other things will be shed. 30-second conclusion, gather up all the arguments and information and conclude everything, just kind of wrap it up and re-emphasize why you picked what you picked. So, without further...
Look at how good he is a host, guys. Much better than the season 1 host, I just gotta say.
Who was it?
He's my favorite one at this table right now.
Oh, wait. What?
Wow.
Cool.
It's a low blow.
If that's flattery, it's working. I am a sucker. No,
that's why I sat next to him, so I could just try to hold his hand while we're arguing and look him in the eyes. It's flirting. I'm flirting to win.
Hey.
Really feel like I'm at a disadvantage right now.
Stuart just reaches across to grab my hand.
Brandon, I hope you know we're going to destroy you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll take great pleasure in that.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well.
This is not a team up at all.
No. This is alliances are forming.
That's never happened before. All right.
It's not happening.
No.
Speaking of alliances that may be forming, Stuart knows what I'm doing. We're going to... Like in Game of Thrones, there are alliances in Game of Thrones, which is a show on HBO, which leads us to our first question. What is the best HBO show?
Ooh.
For this round, we'll just go right down, starting with Jacob. So, Jacob, give us what you picked and why.
Alrighty, for this fight, I have chosen Game of Thrones. It is not only the most expensive series that HBO has produced, but the most ambitious overall. George R. Martin, the original author of the series, at least in the book form, had intended it to be impossible to portray on film or television, and they produced a beautiful show. It has a large global audience, as well as it's placed in several countries, I think 12 up to now. The success of the show has even prompted their HBO Go program to be started. In light of the piracy concerns after the end of season 4, they had to launch it because there were so many people illegally downloading the show. It was that popular. All right, and that stands for my time. I'll cut off right there.
Okay, we'll go down to Stuart then.
All right, kiddos. So I picked HBO's 10-part miniseries, The Pacific. For one, I think I'm a sucker for war movies and also war TV shows, and I think that the Pacific is a great realistic depiction of the Pacific theater in World War II, which has been sort of I'm not gonna say like ignored, but I think like a lot of movies and pop culture tends to focus on the war towards in Germany, and I think this was really a really good depiction of the Pacific theater. We get to focus on really strong characters that are fully fleshed out, that don't get oversaturated like I think the other opponents shows. It shows the brutality and the how psychologically taxing the war in Japan was on some of our troops, and such a great hit show as well. It has Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks executive producers like Band of Brothers. And yeah, I just want to hit on the last 15 seconds. The big point is that it's not an oversaturated show. Again, it's just 10-part miniseries that goes this journey with these characters from the starting point into how they end up in the show and explains the things they go through.
Awesome. And we'll finish off with Brandon.
Okay, so I selected The Sopranos, the seminal mobster show that ran from 1999 to 2007. And why I picked The Sopranos is not only because it's this incredible depiction of crime, family, and life, and intense psychodrama. It is because it really ushered in what we call the golden age of TV, where TV shows could be just as prestigious as the film industry and art house films. And without The Sopranos, you don't get Mad Men, you don't get Breaking Bad, you don't get The Wire, you don't get either of these two shows. HBO decided to become this hub for prestige television after airing The Sopranos. And don't just take my word for it. Rolling Stone says it's the greatest TV show of all time. IndieWire says it's the second greatest TV show of all time. Pace Magazine and Uprock say it's the second best HBO show, all ranked above their shows. And it has won countless Emmys, awards, accolades, and it's the most influential TV series of the 21st century.
All right, so let's start our 5-minute forum.
Okay, Stuart, I was really confused. I think you had a typo in your submission because you didn't even choose the best HBO World War II series, is what I noticed.
Say Band of Brothers.
Yeah,
well,
Band
also
of
you have Generation Kill. I feel like there's so many options within the miniseries department, especially with HBO. And I think out of those three, I would rank the Pacific as the lowest.
I
Absolutely.
disagree completely. I think that the Pacific has just such great characters from the get-go that we see like their starting point to their end point. And I think that what's the greatest part, what I love about this mini-series is that it doesn't oversaturate the developmental growth of these characters. We get a starting point to an end point, and we get this great journey with them. Whereas I think with your shows, as shows that probably should have ended like, a few seasons before, I think that they get a problem to oversaturated characters, oversaturated plot. It gets to like, too many side journeys and side shows, and I think that that's kind of where your shows kind of falter under mine. Like, Game of Thrones, I think we can say that season 7, right? Is the 7th season that just ended? Kind of like picked up speed almost way too quickly. So the problem with Game of Thrones is I think that it's not really deciding of which audience wants to decide. So for the majority, I think season 1 to 3 was like, okay, this is not an action-packed show. This is a drama, almost soap opera kind of, you say, takes place in medieval times. Fine. To
pick up off your comment of oversaturation, I would say that is a sign of big stumble. A sign of success that a series can be as long-running as either The Sopranos or Game of Thrones. It is relying on good writers and also great characters. The comment I would make at The Sopranos is, as the show went along, the fault that was found in the later seasons that while many of the great characters were killed off and had great deaths, there were not many characters to fill in those blanks afterwards. Whereas Game of Thrones has a huge tapestry of like almost hundreds of characters that after one peg falls down, the next part moves up in the wheel.
My problem with that is that The Sopranos, even though they were killing people off, they still had incredible characters. What does Game of Thrones have? Too many crappy characters. Like, how many hours of my life have I wasted on Bran on the back of somebody in the woods?
Yeah, that's true. The Bran storyline's kind of like, it's never really given us a definite point of where it's supposed to head towards. And if there is a point, like, I think it's season 7's really shown where, like, we're all like, spoiler alert, tell him he's a Targaryen. Like, come on, man. And I know, like, at the end, he kind of, like, says that and makes a discovery. But Bran is, like, just the card that they can end everything because he knows everything. And I think that's been kind of overdrawn out. And, yeah, I agree. The Bran storyline just angers me because it could be a good storyline. Mm-hmm. But it's taken 7 seasons for him to even say, oh, yeah, Jon's a Targaryen.
Yeah, by the way.
But with the, like, straight face.
Also, all the Sam stuff. There's too much filler on Game of Thrones. They set up this wide tapestry, and they decided to focus way too much on things they shouldn't have been focusing on. And then then the main storyline is going along like freaking roller coaster right
So that's
now.
kind of what I was kind of going with. So yeah, going to like my original point I was making about Game of Thrones. In the first 3 seasons, I think it started off with that drama, slow-paced soap opera. That's fine, okay. If that's what the audience is trying to go for, that's okay. But then in season, like, started to get there in like season 5, mostly 6 and 7, where it's like, oh man, we got 2 seasons left. Dragon fight, character death, and it's like bam, 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 and it's like, whoa, which are you going for? The film audience or the TV audience? Like, it's kind of inconsistent in that.
I haven't heard anything about The Sopranos.
The ending.
Now, The Sopranos, I will say, it's longer lasting than The Pacific is the thing.
Well, it's a
it
miniseries,
managed.
so yeah.
True. That's the thing. It's that The Sopranos kept momentum for 6 seasons and demonstrated that. What if The Pacific kept going? I know it's supposed to be the self-contained story, but The Sopranos managed to keep its momentum for 6 seasons. It won Best Series at the Emmys for several years. James Gandolfini won 3 years in a row at the Emmys. This shows that The Sopranos was able to keep its momentum
I
over
think that,
several years.
not to interrupt, sorry to interrupt,
Oh,
but
that's
it's a
fine.
show. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. But I think the argument with like how, you know, a lot of people come on the show and say, it came first and it brought this thing along. I think it's something to be thankful for with The Sopranos, but like you said, we did get Mad Men, we did get Breaking Bad, we did get Game of Thrones, and I think we kind of have to like look at these shows that, yes, because Sopranos kind of gave us this golden age of television, it was not in the golden age of television. And I think that
Yes, it was. It lasted until 2007.
I would even add on to Stuart saying that yes, it set the standard, but that doesn't mean that it is necessarily like up the ante. And you have a show like Thrones that is only constantly delivered. And although there are plot lines that don't work, the overall action is great. It is a social media event every time an episode comes out.
Look at me in the eyes and tell me that Game of Thrones is willing enough to kill a main character nowadays.
I would say that. I mean, I shouldn't defend
I
him,
would,
but I would
say
say
that they could kill maybe one of their primary characters as the shows went on. They've had primary, secondary, tertiary.
I will
characters.
kind of add on to
You could
that,
kill a
though,
character like
is
Arya.
they've had opportunities to do that this season, and they didn't take it.
Like
Very true.
Jamie Lannister. just got
Sopranos,
magically
in 3
better.
seconds, the ending. I'm going to say the ending. Just that.
Good.
And you can defend it in your 30 seconds.
Okay. So for our 30 seconds, we'll just head right back down the line, starting with Brandon.
To go on the Sopranos finale, I think it is one of the defining series finales of our times because it was a surprising ending that no one liked, but it was a bold artistic choice. But in conclusion, The Sopranos, over its 6-season run, managed to be constantly engaging, interesting, dramatic, and was anchored by incredible performances. And Game of Thrones is running out of steam and is a medieval roller coaster, and The Pacific only had 10 episodes to prove itself.
Go to Stuart.
Okay, so The Sopranos ending I don't think was artistic at all. I think it just kind of said, we need to end this thing, and here's what you got. And it kind of let up a lot of people down. Game of Thrones thing is oversaturated. It's kind of drawn out some characters a little too long, and also some side stories too long that hasn't really proven its worth to be part of the main plot. I also don't think they've lost their edge on if they're going to kill main characters, which was their gimmick in the first 3 seasons. The Pacific is a great 10-part miniseries. It doesn't need to like stretch out so far. It has a told story that it needs to tell with great characters from a beginning to an end in their journey.
And we'll finish off with Jacob.
While both of my competitors have great shows they presented, I believe that mine is superior, basically based on the action that is depicted in the show. The show has countlessly won awards and consistently show that they're on the cutting edge of fight cinematography, special effects, and staging. The show has garnered several awards for HBO. It would not be the network that it is today without the show, and it also broke the way for several shows like Thrones to be pitched and continue to be produced in this modern age.
Okay.
I just want to say that these are my notes for like the Pacific, and like I just listed your guys' things down. So good shows.
Cool.
Okay. Any thoughts or any facts to be checked, Vaughn?
These presidents tell the truth.
Wow.
Wow, what a stunning sentiment nowadays.
There we go.
Oh, we're going. Anybody have any thoughts that they want to
Can't see me
share?
backstage, so it's hard.
Yeah, ghosts are going to be talking to us
I guess.
because of this light setup.
I know. It's like it does get a little spooky when you like
It
stare out.
does.
It's like, who is that? Nobody then. Okay, then it's just me. I make this joke every episode, but I'm gonna continue to make it. I make that sound so you know I'm thinking hard about like.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just making that noise.
We're turning Cardinal film fights into an ASMR.
Do you like movies?
We're gonna like
I
pan the
like
microphone a
movies.
certain way, so it's like, and now I'm whispering into your center left ear.
Yes, I know.
Ah.
You are laying down in a field of grass.
Okay, I've made
Does
my
anyone have a
decree.
hairbrush?
Good.
I'm going to give first place to Jacob.
Ooh.
Second place to Brandon. I'm sorry, Stuart. Third place.
Fired, Mark.
Going out with a bang, everybody. No. So, Jacob, I'm giving you first place because I think you did a great job of expressing the importance of Game of Thrones not only to HBO but to the television industry in general. You defended the oversaturation of characters, saying that it has stayed consistently strong and that it has had a prominent cultural impact with the HBO Go thing and piracy. Also, just that it's been a very popular, very strong show that's added a lot in terms of filmmaking, choreography, effects, the whole 9 yards. Brandon, I'm giving you second place because you established that The Sopranos was a monumental stepping point for the golden age of television, but I think they got you there in saying, well, yeah, but it didn't stop at The Sopranos, that television kind of progressed from there. Also, Stuart hit you hard with the ending of The Sopranos, and that was hard to. I mean, and you did an admirable job of trying to recover from that.
Never seen it. Never seen The Sopranos.
Oh, you should. You'd like
I've seen a few episodes. I'll tune into it.
Yep.
So I was pulling that out of my ass. So.
And Stuart didn't pick Band of Brothers. The end.
Yeah, and Stuart, yes. So on to Stuart. Stuart, basically, a 10-part miniseries just is not enough to, I think, qualify. I mean,
it's gonna be rough for my TV anti-hero then.
oh,
Which will save till
Ooh.
that round.
yes.
Can't
which
wait.
is- But I can't tell you when that's going to be because, got to listen to the segue.
Yeah.
Anywho, they got you that there were better war choices.
Their shows are better. I'm gonna be honest.
That-
Straight
okay,
up.
Thank
so
you.
Stuart concedes defeat.
Yeah.
Stuart, no.
No, I saw that. I'm like, I don't watch a lot of HBO, and I haven't seen The Wire, so I thought, well, I can't argue Westworld because it's only been one season. So, the Pacific, it's fine.
So,
Not sound logic, I know.
so on to the second round. So, guys, shows like Game of Thrones.
Oh, I
where-
know a perfect segue, but I don't know what the next round is.
Oh, this is not the perfect segue.
Oh.
Let me tell you that right now. But it is a segue, and it's a Mark segue. So, shows like Game of Thrones, where people are jockeying for position, in Sopranos, where you gotta,
jockeying.
they're bullies.
Guys, let's just get out.
All right.
They're jockeying for position there. And then Sopranos got some mean guys who you could call bullies. And the Pacific has war. And
That's in high school movies.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all the time.
So it reminds me a lot of high school. So that leads us to our like I told you, not by any means the perfect segue.
I'll tell you what. I'll let you know what my segues were, but anyway. keep
And-
going.
So for second question, we're going to go with best high school movie. And this time we'll start with Stuart.
Oh boy.
Which
All
way are we
right.
going? Are we going this way or that way, Mark?
We are going to go this way.
Awesome.
So Jacob, you will be finishing us off.
Excellent.
All right. You ready? So, best high school movie of all time is Dead Poet Society. So, I have like 50 quotes written down, but I'm not going to get to them yet. So, it actually deals with, I think, Dead Poet Society deals with the hard subjects and problems that high schoolers are going through. First off, I'm just going to say Robin Williams and what I think is his best role, even better than Sean in Good Will Hunting. I've lost, to quote Walt Whitman, oh me, oh life, of the questions of these reoccurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish, what good amid these, oh me, oh life? Answer that you are here, that life exists, an identity, and the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse, and the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. What will your verse be? Like, come on. If a teacher told me that's in high school, it's like, Dead Poet Society is the best high school movie of all time. It deals with the issues that high schoolers go through and just has a lot of passion that high schoolers need to watch.
Awesome. So Brandon, you are next.
All right, I chose Wes Anderson's Rushmore. Now, Rushmore is a really, really incredible film. It is a celebration of being a teenager and what it's like to grow up, but it isn't a stereotypical high school movie. It carries these themes, but it's so unconventionally made and shot, and the humor is so distinctly Wes Anderson. We have a killer cast with Jason Schwartzman, Bill Murray, and Olivia Williams carrying the lead roles, and they all do a fantastic job establishing this offbeat nature of the world that they build. It is a hilarious and heartfelt movie. It has a killer soundtrack of a lot of great 70s folk rock jams. And under the incredible direction of Wes Anderson, this already great screenplay is elevated into being a visual treat as well as just so distinctly crafted. And this film is, of course, in the Criterion Collection, a celebration of the best films ever made by film historians.
Co-written by Owen Wilson. I
Yes.
believe, right? Yeah.
Ooh.
Wow.
And we'll finish off with Jacob.
Alrighty, and I chose Heathers for the greatest high school movie. What a classic film, Winona Ryder in maybe her most quintessential role. You have a high school movie that follows the tropes. You have all the things that would be exemplified in a public school, the jocks, the geeks, the popular girls, and it paved the way for films like Clueless and Mean Girls that fall in the same spirit of this like comedy pointing at the the fallacies basically of public school. In this, it gets a little bit more darkly comedic, but I think that helps accentuate the film because you have the high stakes world of high school that's followed up with a high stakes plot where there is actually a plot to explode the high school. It's R-rated, so all of the dialogue is the way that high schoolers normally speak. And I think a film like this could not be made anymore, not to get controversial, but in a post-Columbine world, a movie with this audacious of a plot would be seen as a threat, and I think it's a great film, and it's great preserved through time. Yes, that is all I have. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, then let's start with our 5-minute forum.
I just want to start off just like a little maybe minor trigger warning, just because we're going to talk a lot about like suicides and stuff.
Yeah, of
so
course.
just for the audience, that's the one thing I want to point out. Like, yeah, it does have a lot of things that high school today normally has, like jocks, cheerleaders, school shootings, suicides. Like, I think.
Ooh, I knew you were coming with
Yeah,
this.
so that's the kind of thing I want to point out. Is I think it is. Like you mentioned, it's not a movie that would be made today. It's a good movie, but in terms of when I thought of like the best high school movie, and I don't want to get into a semantics argument, but I wouldn't show a high schooler this movie because and I mean, yeah, it would kind of be like the sad fact is this does happen in this country, and I don't want to get too like sentimental and political, but like I think that it's not a film I would show to a high schooler, and I think it's a good film at the time it was made, but I don't think it stands up today.
Heathers is an anti-high school movie. I think it's sort of this direct reaction to the John Hughes sort of high school film where you have all the cliques and everyone's trying to survive. Heathers is this really savage takedown of that sort of mold of filmmaking and storytelling. And while I think it's a really brilliant movie, to call it a high school movie, I think it's like a direct takedown of that sort of genre.
Yeah,
so I
I would agree
hesitate
with
calling
that.
it the best high school movie. It takes place in high school, but it's not a high school movie.
I could make the same argument that with Rushmore, you would have films where it's not traditionally a public school.
Yeah,
in the
I
same way
kinda-
they're
Yeah, I
they're,
mean, all of our
it
movies
also
are kind of
public school.
untraditional.
Oh,
He
that's
does
right.
go to a public
Public
school at
school
the
at
end.
the
I
end.
think all of our movies
That's
consider
where it
our count
goes.
as like it takes place in like a high school age, so it counts in the category. I'm just saying towards the relevance of today, I don't think that Heathers would be something I would count as the best high school movie.
Right, but
it's
I
good
feel
for
like the
its
the
time.
overdramatic elements of it accentuate and put it in a safe atmosphere to like encapsulate the story. Like while you still have these high stakes, very like unlikely things that not many high schools deal with school shootings, suicide in that regard. You see these like high schoolers put in a bubble where they know they're in the national attention and they act the way that high schools do. They try to grab up all the
So instead of
attention they
further
can.
like trying to take down, I have like up to pages of notes. I'm just gonna try to get through to let you guys talk. But like first off, can we just talk about like the fact that we have Ethan Hawke as Todd Anderson, Robert Sean Leonard as Neil Perry. These guys that are at their young moments of their careers that pull off such a good performance. You have Neil Perry character played by Robert Sean Leonard, who's like the son who's playing the act, literally a quote in the movie by his overbearing father figure. How many times have we gone through that? Like, who wants his son to do explicitly what he wants him to do, plus the kids that don't really have passion in their lives. They're just kind of going through what their parents tell them to do, and they meet this teacher that tells them that no, like carpe diem, seize the day, boys. This is like live your life to the best of your ability to what you want to do. And I think that's such a message that people need to hear, especially nowadays. It's like we always get caught up with like he even says it in like the movie. He's like business, like medicine. These are the things that are necessary to maintain life. But poetry, romance, love, these are the things we live for. And gosh, it's like people don't think of it as much like that today. And like it's surprising to me. I think a lot of people watch this in high school and they're like English junior class. But like when I watch this, it like especially Robin Williams' performance and how he conveyed Mr. Keating's character was just he literally said he wanted to play the teacher that everybody would have wanted. So I want to give you guys time to talk. but
Dead
that's
Poets
just
Society is one of the most overwrought, syrupy, cliched high school movies ever made.
You're wrong.
It is
Wrong.
so stereotyped.
Wrong.
Oh,
It is
yes.
everything that
Because
is
I think it-
ever been in a
It
high school
plays
movie.
on the reality aspect of it. Like these kids, these are real people that I think go through the real problems that the story addresses.
What about Heathers? People
Well-
go through real problems with Heathers. What
Yeah,
about
people go through real
the,
problems with
the
Heathers.
bigger woman at the end who?
Well, I don't
reserved
think a
it?
kid can
the
pull out a
dumb stock,
gun in the
yes.
cafeteria and shoot two jocks with blanks and not be punished. I don't think that's
That's
a real
at least
person.
interesting to
Was
put in a
punished. He was
movie. Dead
suspended.
Poets Society is all these kids just mumbling around a field.
Mumbling around a
Rushmore,
field,
mumbling around the field.
They're talking about the real passions that they're actually passionate for because they never had a chance to
You
do
know
that.
what's passionate? Rushmore. Max and
Rushmore
so
is a
passionate about
okay
the arts.
Wes
He is
Anderson
so
movie.
passionate
It's an
about
okay Wes
creation,
Anderson movie
and it
that-
takes
Sorry.
it takes this aspect of growing up and being in high school and does something interesting with it. It gives it Wes Anderson style. There is nothing interesting in
It
the
is
filmmaking
a
of
good
Dead Poets
Bill
Society.
Murray movie. I think he deserved that nomination for whatever award he
Dead
got
Poets
nominated
Society
for.
could have been directed by a computer.
Peter Weir actually brought his own experiences from going to a preparatory school to actually develop this story about the Dead Poets
Yeah, I'm
Society.
glad the prep got a camera.
I'm gonna butt in. I've been really entertained by this. I would say that where you have Heathers, where you have teachers who don't actually help, which is usually the case with high schools, unlike Dead Poet Society, where you have the greatest teacher, which
Yeah.
many people
Who's
don't
got
have.
that?
Who has
Well, that's
Robin
why I
Williams
think
as
it's
a
such an
teacher?
important high school movie, and that makes it the best because I think like it shows this teacher that's genuinely
But why
passionate
can't you?
about his
Why
work
can't you
and
attack the
genuinely passionate.
subject of high school at face value and have this negative aspect where it's like,
It
yeah,
does.
it's their cattle.
There is
they're-
a suicide in this movie about a kid who is trapped in this position that he can't do whatever he wants. So it does address those real. high
Rushmore's
school
all
themes.
about entrapment.
Okay, wow.
Got a little heated.
Yeah. Bringing back memories from high school. That'll always get the blood heat. Any facts to check, Vaughn?
Conclusions?
Oh, yeah, I
Conclusions.
guess if you want to do that first.
Got that heated.
Yeah, I got that heated. I'm just like, I don't know if I can take much more of the heat. Okay, this time we will start with Stuart, but we will go Jacob and then Brandon.
Okay. Dead Poet Society has the best of both worlds in this movie. It has a great premise, great characters. Like you have Robert Williams playing like the best professor that anybody could have. I could quote the scene when Todd Anderson, Ethan Hawke's character, who doesn't prepare a poem when he goes to class, and so Robin Williams, Mr. Keating, does this great technique where he just like tells him what's the first thing he thinks about, and it ends up with him saying this great poem that everyone in class is like shocked by, and he says, "Remember this." Like, oh my gosh, come on! Like this is just something that I would show a high schooler. It's like this is your expectation. Follow your dreams.
I would say the Dead Poet Society has an incredible performance from Robin Williams. However, that does not credit itself clearly as the best film. As Brandon brought up, Heathers was a very counterculture perspective, attacking the John Hughes films of the era at the tail end of the 80s, and I believe it accomplished exactly what it needed to do. It set in, it had an incredible story, and also you have Winona Ryder, who is giving the performance of her life, everybody. Just the best.
Stuart talks about the best of both worlds. Let me tell you what both worlds are to me. Doing themes of high school movies and growing up and adolescence and all these wonderful things while combining them with the artistry of Wes Anderson. I think that Rushmore, not like Heathers, is actually a high school movie, and not like Dead Poets Society is an interesting piece of filmmaking, and I think that Wes Anderson undoubtedly created the best piece about growing up here.
Okay. Now are there facts to check, Vaughn?
No.
Try asking again later. May I have something to eat? No.
Sorry, 1 second. Hello?
Disqualified.
Yeah, he's here. I think he's available. Okay. Mark, it's for you. It's God. He thinks
Oh.
I should win the first place point.
Oh.
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 Sorry,
Oh,
it's a
it was
pull.
a bit.
It's a pull from the movie. Sorry, I thought it was gonna be a
Uh,
joke, but nobody's laughing. So.
Oh, that's
Exactly.
That's, yeah, that's.
It was a good
I
bit.
see.
I
That-
appreciate
that is
I
good.
appreciate the commitment to it.
Give me
I
third
d-
place already. It's fine.
I took.
That was just as corny as Dead Poets Society.
Oh.
It's fine. Round's over. Hey.
So, does anyone have any thoughts that they would like to share? Oh, Tyler's got thoughts.
I absolutely love Dead Poets Society. I think that it has this, it plays on this unspoken giant struggle of teenagers and I think all around the world. And it's this idea of how one day you're a kid and the next day you're an adult and suddenly you have to decide what you want to do with your life. And as I think, especially here in America, we're graduating high school, and then the next day it's like, well, what do I want to major in? What do I want to do for the rest of my life? And it also plays on this pressure I think a lot of kids in the world have from their parents about, having a career, doing better than them. And I think that's a huge stressor for kids in high school, and I think Dead Poet Society plays on that. Also, I think that the message of Dead Poet Society stands the test of time, because I think the lessons in that movie could be even more relevant today than they were when the movie came out. So, yeah.
Oh, Captain Mike.
I do agree that the lessons in the movie are extremely important and will stand the test of time, but that doesn't change the fact that the movie is just kind of boring altogether.
Oh, shots fired.
Oof. Paige, you're fired.
Thank you, Paige.
Okay. So,
If you thought Dead Poets Society was boring, wait till you get to the Kubrick round.
Ooh.
Oh.
Well, that's what I was going to.
okay, I made my decision.
Okay.
Given first place to Stuart.
What?
Second place to Jacob.
What?
Third place
Yes.
to
Thank you.
Brandon.
Thank you.
Okay,
I
Stuart.
Captain, my captain.
Gladly take second place.
Okay, Stuart, I'm giving you first place.
That probably peaked the audio. It's fine. It's all good.
So,
I didn't even get to like the most argument about Heathers either.
oh,
Can I just say it? Like, it
Yeah,
doesn't
sure.
matter.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
That's
Fuck
fine.
it.
It's an exact replica of Massacre at Central High in 1976. Vaughn will look up the IMDb of Massacre at Central High. It's literally the exact same plot.
I'll
just
have to look
boys.
that up. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah.
I haven't either.
I didn't even say that. So
Wow.
sorry, but I got first anyway. So fuck y'all.
Okay, Stuart, I'm giving you first because as a theater education major.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you didn't know you were supposed to be playing to the education major. No, just kidding.
Damn it.
Oh, yeah.
No. Actually, that didn't influence my decision that
Oh.
much. I kind of forgot I was an education major until I just thought of it now. But no. I feel like Dead Poet Society is a wonderful movie that holds the high school experience or the high school age to a standard, and it sets the bar high for students. It empowers students, and it does have very many iconic and quotable moments, and I think it will stand the test of time. And so I think it shines a light on what high school can be, not necessarily what it is. Now, conversely, Jacob, your movie very much shows like the pits of high school, like what it is. And so if I'm giving Stuart first for the idealism, I'm giving yours second for the reality. And that I think, I watched Heathers as like, oh, I totally knew girls in high school who would say stuff like, fuck me with a chainsaw,
Yeah.
And it's like,
Of course.
Why on my dick? Stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and it's also, but it does it with a dark comic
Right,
twist, which is
right.
also very real to high school. That's how you survive it. And then Brandon, I'm afraid yours just kind of fell in between. In between that, it wasn't quite the dark reality of Heathers, and it wasn't quite the inspiring idealism of Dead Poet Society, and so it just kind of, and I didn't hear that much about Rushmore
We
during
did
the fight.
talk over him a lot, so I apologize for that.
Yeah.
But I could lose all the other rounds, so I'm just glad I won for Dead Poets.
So, just to reiterate, first place Stuart, second place Jacob, third place Brandon. Now, I know at this moment, I probably seem like an antagonist to many people.
Oh, boy.
Jeez.
But I assure you, I am not an antagonist, but an anti-hero. But enough about me being an anti-hero. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I told these are bad. They're like this every week, folks.
Oh, all right.
But enough about me being an anti-hero. Let's talk about the best TV anti-hero. And so, who hasn't started yet? Brandon.
I haven't.
Brandon hasn't started. We'll start with Brandon, and then we'll go to Jacob and finish with Stuart.
Oh, jeez, my time. So I hate to be the Sopranos guy, but my TV anti-hero of the moment is Tony Soprano. He is one of the most influential TV characters ever, period. James Gandolfini in his performance brought real depth and pain to a violent mobster. He is arguably the first TV anti-hero of our era in the golden age of television. Without him, you don't get either their characters, you don't get Walter White, you don't get Don Draper, you don't get any of them. James Gandolfini won 3 Emmys and 1 Golden Globe for this performance, as well as several SAG awards, and it is just a really incredible portrayal. Tony Soprano, I should say, is a layered, sympathetic mobster who, while doing all of these violent things, still is able to gain our sympathy in the audience by having weird fascinations with ducks or just standing around making weird dad jokes. And for that reason, I think that Tony Soprano is the best TV anti-hero.
Awesome. Then we'll go to Jacob.
Alrighty, my pick for best TV antihero is Frank Underwood, portrayed by the excellent Kevin Spacey. Now, let me make it clear, we want to separate the art from the artist. It is a great performance. I do not condone any of the accusations based on Kevin Spacey. However, everything with his character you can see from the very first scene. Whenever he gives a monologue to the camera with a fourth wall break, saying that he's going to snap this dog's neck because it's going to be the best thing for him, shows his ends justify the means personality that pervades his character throughout the series. He is always a character that is reflected by that, so you always know what his code of ethics is, that he will get the job done as long as the ends justify the means. He's sinister yet charming, with the fourth wall breaks especially. You can definitely just feel the charm coming off the camera. All of his villains are his political opponents that may necessarily not be wrong morally, but are definitely in his way, both in his party and opposite of his party. Yeah, and that's all I have for Frank Underwood.
Okay, and Stuart.
It is kind of sad when a fictional president's held to a higher standard than a real one, but anyway.
So true.
So I picked Johnny Cochran from the first season of American Crime Story, The People vs. O.J. I picked Johnny Cochran because he defines an anti-hero because he's literally the trial attorney of O.J. Simpson. So you don't really get much more like anti-heroic than that. But also the fact that he really does believe in what he's doing is going to help the country and just help people across America. You get with like his passion in like defending the case from like the complete different sides of like the other attorneys. They're just kind of there to like either make money or just for the publicity of the case. Like Johnny Cochran's actually there to like get OJ out and to prove a point that racism was such a huge issue in the 1990s in Los Angeles, and he did it very, very well. There's an end scene when Bill Clinton is making a statement, and he actually like makes a statement like, "It's working. We finally did it." Like proves to show that he really means what he is trying to do.
All right. Let's go into our 5-minute forum.
Yeah, I'm not gonna use the whole Kevin Spacey thing. I think that's just
absolutely
on the
not.
table.
Appreciate it, guys.
I think Frank Underwood kind of becomes more. Again, don't want to get too more semantic, but I think he kind of becomes more of a villain, I think, and it's more Claire that's like the anti-hero.
Right, but in that same
But-
semantic discussion, if you classify Johnny Cochran as an anti-hero, who is the villain of his story?
O.J. Simpson.
Okay.
Easy.
O.J.
interesting.
Simpson is not the villain of The People versus O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't.
I would say so.
No,
Who
the
is?
villain
He's a plot
is
boy.
O.J.'s attorneys and the hero is the state's attorneys. And in regards to Kevin Spacey's performance, he's based off of an old character from a BBC show. So how much originality is Kevin Spacey putting into this? Because they already got the talking to the camera bit. They already got the corrupt politician bit. Kevin Spacey couldn't even win an Emmy for it. He has 1 Golden Globe for that performance, 0 Emmys. James Gandolfini
There's a
has
lot of
3
nominations.
I feel like there's an
but-
ocean
Nominations,
difference between British politics and American politics, and the show with nuance is able to show that like it is very backdealing. Washington has its own kind of politics that isn't represented by.
But
any
how
other
much
country.
nuance can we get with politicians suck and here's why? And there's a better anti-hero right on that show, and it's Claire Underwood. Robin Wright has a better performance. She is a more compelling character. Her arc has been so much better than Frank Underwood's. One spoiler alert, Frank Underwood became the president. The show was fucking garbage. House of Cards is...
I don't know. I would say it's
Okay, that's a
garbage.
bit
I would say
harsh.
it takes a
I'm
new,
gonna-
new interesting direction. from
I,
that point
I
forward.
would agree with that point. I don't think I would say it's garbage, but I do think I think he does start off as like this person that's trying to get to higher standards, but once he does reach the presidency, is like, oh, power is mine and I will maintain it. Ha 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 ha.
I think,
And it's
we're
like-
talking about story arcs when you bring up Johnny Cochran. Although it is a smaller limited series, I see no change as him throughout a character throughout.
Yeah,
the only
well,
amount of
that's the whole
conflict.
thing.
The only
Again,
amount of
we're not
conflict
arguing
that's
the best
presented to
developmental
him-
growth. We're arguing the best TV anti-hero.
That's true,
and I
but-
think when we're arguing for anti-hero, it's somebody who like does a profession or something that doesn't really, someone we shouldn't really root for that we end up rooting for anyway. And I think, again, going back to that last scene when like you get the verdict of like O.J. Simpson and like they're celebrating his office and somebody says the president's making a statement and the president says, and this is Bill Clinton at the time, says like, you know, we realize that there is a huge race issue in the Los Angeles area with the police department. And while he's saying this, like, He's played by Courtney Vance, a beautiful performance. I believe he actually won an Emmy for
Yes,
that.
he did.
So he's like crying on screen and says, "It's finally working. We're making a difference." And it's that moment that seals the deal for you. That says, "Wow, he believed everything he was arguing for." Like, because I think there's even John Travolta. He plays one of the attorneys. I don't remember his name.
Robert Shapiro.
Robert Shapiro. He even says, like, in one of the meeting, who thinks OJ did it? Like, you can just tell that these attorneys aren't really in it for just the sake of OJ and to make a social change, whereas Johnny Cochran is, and I think that's what makes him the best TV anti-hero. Tony Soprano, I think you said a lot of words like influential and first. And I think the reason why you didn't win the first round is because, again, I don't think those make the best. I think that we have that to thank for, but I do think Walter White or Jimmy McGill from Better Call Saul or what you said Mad Men, or I haven't seen Mad Men, but I think that those kind of like take the cake over Tony Soprano, in my opinion.
Well, no, he doesn't, because Tony Soprano, again, he is a lot darker than most of those characters apart from Walter White, because he is a murdering mobster.
See, he's not one I would argue isn't an anti-hero. I think he is, but I just don't think he reaches on top of the ones that came after him.
And none of the characters at that table are anti-heroes. So, Judge, who are you going to pick when you have one anti-hero and two villains?
It's Johnny Cochran's totally an anti-hero. Like,
He's the villain of the
thinks-
piece.
I mean,
he's not the villain.
He's a
Simpson and
sympathetic villain.
I don't
Well,
think
then that
so.
kind of gets into a more gray than
Yeah,
what
that's
is
a
an
gray
anti-hero if
area.
it's a sympathetic
Yeah.
villain. I would say that Tony is great whenever he's doing truly awful things and you like enjoying it. But as the show progressed, we get less and less more interesting discussions in their therapy sessions. And I think as a
I
character,
disagree.
he grew a little bit stagnant, at least over time.
Well, that's the whole point, is that Tony Soprano is this guy in Arrested Development, and he has hit a point in his life where he's accomplishing all of these ridiculous evil things, and he should feel on top of the world, but he doesn't. So he has this layer of sympathetic psychology that was entirely just really fully realized. And I have to say that Tony Soprano is the only fully original character being argued right now. So he was forged from scratch. That's a person, that's from a BBC show.
But an incredible
I mean,
performance by Kevin
it's
Spacey.
it's an archetype of the gangster mobster. If we want to pull back to The Godfather, he's basically pulling off
Tony
like,
Soprano is so much more complex than Michael Corleone.
I don't know.
Well, he's
You're
a
trying to say
product
that
of the
ours isn't really
Godfather
as original
age.
when you're pulling off of a lot of gangster films that came before us, whereas mine's literally like this happened like 20 years ago of an actual character that, I mean, unless if you really research the name, nobody really.
Where was that infamous scene in The Godfather where one of the Corleones was in therapy talking about how he wanted to put a bullet in his head?
I mean, for what Kevin Spacey does in the role of Frank Underwood is groundbreaking because you don't have a president normally as the anti-hero. That's never been done in any other original series.
Okay.
Good job, guys.
24.
Okay.
Oh. See
Oh.
what you did there?
You want to hear something funnier than 24? 25.
25.
Nice. So, had to make that.
I don't even need these glasses. I just wore them to look smarter. Fun
Well,
fact.
Okay.
How are you gonna deal with that, Mark?
You know, I will say when you took him off, I was like, I don't know if Stewart's as smart. And then you put him back, I was like, no, he's
Oh.
smart. Yeah, it's like, no.
Right?
Yeah.
Reasons
Let's
why
see.
I've been winning.
Who hasn't started conclusions? Jacob, have you started?
I don't think I've
conclusions?
started yet.
Well, then start conclusions.
All right, I'll start my conclusion. Frank Underwood is an incredible character, and it's a very nuanced portrayal. The fourth wall breaks is something that differentiates him from every other character presented here, and also it makes him more relatable. That's the main goal with being an anti-hero, is you want someone who's doing truly heinous things in the pursuit of doing something right, but you want to still like them at the end of the day. I feel like as the show progressed, both People vs. OJ and Sopranos, I generally liked those characters less as they were on screen.
Let's see. And then Brandon, will have you go second.
Okay. Apart from Tony Soprano being the only wholly original character on this panel right now, I need to emphasize that they took the archetype of a classic gangster character and added so many layers of interesting psychology and character development. All of those therapy scenes did so much to show just how layered and complex and tragic of a character Tony Soprano is. I think it's a layered performance, a pioneering performance, and an incredible character.
And Stewart.
I think you said it for yourself. They take a lot of archetypes and add layers to it. I think they show a lot of layers to Courtney Vance's Johnny Cochran, to the attorney that got OJ out of being found guilty. I think you said a lot of influential and first, which does not make best. I think Frank Underwood, after he becomes president, becomes more power hungry and therefore becomes a villain. Claire takes over as more the anti-hero that we want to see be successful while we should not be rooting for her. Johnny Cochran's somebody that actually believes in his stance, and at the end it gets solidified to where, wow, even though we were not supposed to like this guy, he truly believes in what he's talking about.
Okay. Any facts to check Vaughn?
Just one thing, just because I feel like it might aid in your decision making. I have the definition of anti-hero from Oxford Dictionary. It is a central character in a story, film, or drama who lacks conventional heroic attributes.
I think all of ours could.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
think all
not.
of ours is pretty.
It's not the guy who's married to Uncle Hero. Wow, I was kind of really wondering where you guys were coming from this whole fight. I was like, what?
Wow, Mark, that was.
I'm sorry. I'm terrible. I'm terrible.
Someone
Except
burned this
for that.
building
Yeah.
down.
The
Classic
show's
bit.
over.
Okay.
I just got the cameras.
Any thoughts besides my own?
Anybody?
Nobody? Okay.
No? Okay. Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
It's God.
Oh,
Thinks I should win first place.
Hey, that can't work. That can't work twice.
I'm just saying. Try.
first place. I'm gonna give to Brandon.
Yes.
Second place is Stuart. Third place to Jake. And I'll explain this. Brandon, while I docked you for that pioneering wasn't necessarily best, in character, in the best show, in characters, I feel like a pioneer, after a pioneer, everyone is basically imitating. And so for a pioneering character like Tony Soprano, I feel like everyone else is imitating him. So setting an archetype in a character is a big thing in my mind. Also, I think you made clear points that, it's hard to pin him down as just a bad guy because he's got all these interesting things, like he tells dad jokes and he's fascinated with ducks.
Dad jokes always make them a hero.
Exactly. You can't argue as a guy who makes dad jokes.
Look at Darth Vader.
And it's a very relatable struggle in that he, for all intents and purposes, he should be happy, but he's not. It's a struggle everyone can relate with, even though it's not for the same reasons that he's having this struggle, which is what makes him, I think, an anti-hero, because we can relate to him in his heroic goals, just not his anti-heroic methods. Okay. Stuart, I'm giving, Stuart and Jacob, both of you were also kind of knocked back by his argument that yours were not wholly original characters. Yours based on historical events, and yours based off a BBC show beforehand. Stuart, I'm giving you second place because I think your argument, where the part where he makes that comment on Bill Clinton saying something about the courtroom, really solidifies our ability to sympathize with Johnny Cochran. And for the record, I did know who Johnny Cochran was before this thing, because if anyone has listened to the Book of Mormon soundtrack,
Great soundtrack.
great
That's a great
soundtrack,
soundtrack,
yeah,
yeah.
the spooky Mormon Hell Dream part, where like Genghis Khan, Jeffrey Dahmer, Hitler, Johnny Cochran, and it's like,
I got OJ free.
yeah, I got OJ free. Yeah, that's his only line in the entire musical, but stuck with me. So anywho,
Well, that's great. I did that purposefully.
Hey.
So anyway, but I'm giving you second place because I think that it really solidifies that he is doing this for what he truly believes is the right reasons, even if it is kind of shady. And also I think lawyers themselves, they're always an anti-hero to somebody or a villain to somebody. So had that going for it. And then Jacob, I think they hit you hard in that Frank Underwood is just kind of plateaued. They couldn't really do much more with him as an anti-hero, so they kind of turned him into a villain and giving Claire more center spotlight on that. Which, when he was an anti-hero, he was a great one. And politics and political aspirations is always interesting, but I'm not quite sure if it's something that everyone can relate to be that ambitious that you would kill a dog, or
And many more.
and many more, yes, and many other
many
things.
more.
And so I think everyone could agree that we're fascinated by Frank Underwood, but we may not necessarily sympathize with him. So, just to reiterate, first place Brandon, second place Stuart, third place Jacob. So what does that make our point total at the moment?
They are all tied with 6 points because everyone has gotten first, second, and third.
Whoa.
What?
So, with that being said,
Man,
oh,
that just raised the
stakes
stakes
have
a
been
lot.
I had a different transition segue plan, but I'm improving
I
it.
have a segue for this since I know what the next round is.
Okay, go ahead, Stuart.
Gentlemen, there's no fighting allowed in here. This is a war room.
Oh,
No,
because
because Doctor Strangelove.
Doctor Strangelove.
That's good.
You
That's
see,
good.
I was going to say, well, I'm glad everyone got first because they could all say this is their shining moment.
That's better. I'm gonna say that's better.
Yeah, no, mine was terrible.
Let's Odyssey over to the next round, man.
Oh, let's Odyssey. And
I
well,
think the
and
clock is ticking.
Yeah,
you know?
we'll get through this like clockwork. Oh!
This is gonna be a full show, you know, like
Full
that
House.
was, my eyes are wide open.
Kubrick did Full House, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
He
okay.
directed, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was him.
Every way.
Yeah, they have like thousands of takes.
All right,
of
next
that's
round.
too much.
Yeah.
Next round. Okay. Has everyone started the intros? Has
Yes.
anyone?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll go back to the beginning. Jacob, Stuart, and then Brandon.
Here I am. All right. Clockwork Orange is my pick for best Kubrick film. I believe of the Kubrick films, it's the best character study with Alex DeLarge. Although it's not his original source material, I feel like the adaptation of this film lends credence far more to the original book. Incredible Malcolm McDowell performance, like incredible. His character arc throughout is the best that Kubrick has. You have a character starting at one point and going to the entire gambit of the human experience back to that same exact point. In that way, the theme follows him parallel. Can a man be rid of violence? As we see through the film, the answer is increasingly no for many, many reasons. We have something in this film that is not normally in a Kubrick film, an improvised scene that is incredible, one of the greatest improvised scenes of all time. Very horrific scene, but the inclusion of Singing in the Rain has made it a juxtaposition that has become so iconic in film, and you can't compare the movie without having that involved. I think it's a great story, great movie, great time.
And Stuart.
All right, picture this for me. First 3 minutes, it's just black screen with ambient music, and then we see the earth rising. And it's wah, 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 ba ba, bum 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 bum, and it's like dun 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 dun. It's in domain, so I can sing it. It's fine. Dun dun dun, and it's so okay. Space Odyssey, 2001: A Space Odyssey is by far the best Kubrick film. If we want to talk about technical innovation, 2001 has that down. If we want to talk about the perfectionist that Kubrick is and implied to all his film, 2001 has that down. The amount of research and studying that Kubrick did to make sure that this film was going to stand the test of time, 2001 takes the cake any day. We want to talk about the fact that he picked like a waltz for one of the space sequences when a spaceship is moving, because a waltz in a musical formation, because I'm a music major, by the way, sorry, that has no relevance to anything. I feel like a dick now. A waltz is spinning and space is always spinning. Like, come on, the fact that you put that much research into that much, 2001, the best ever.
And Brandon.
All right. I picked The Shining. The Shining is an incredibly scary, psychedelic, horrifying movie. It is consistently ranked at or near the top of the best horror movies ever made. I have a few lists right here. It's the #1 horror movie according to Empire and IGN. It's the #2 according to Complex. And what I really like about The Shining is that it is open to interpretation without being vague. If you take away all of the bizarro Stanley Kubrick stuff, if you take away the people in the dog masks in the hotel room, you have a taut, scary thriller about a guy who is holding his family hostage. This film, unlike a lot of other horror movies, plays on primal intellectual fears, like being isolated, being betrayed upon by your family, things we can't understand. And this film is so influential, there's an entire fan film called Room 237 dedicated to unpacking fan theories about it. If that's not a great film, I don't know what is.
Okay. Well, let's go straight into our
All
5-minute
right,
form.
so because we all picked fantastic movies, I literally just went to the IMDb goof page and just wrote down a list to tear down your guys' arguments. So
Awesome.
I'm just going to start. So for one, at the bar when Jack is asking for a bourbon on the rocks and the bartender is clearly seen pouring a Jack Daniels, which is a Tennessee whiskey, and a bartender would know better than that, so that's just one.
Got good
Caption
arguments.
that reads Thursday in one of the scenes, and then shortly after we see Wendy and Danny watching the Roadrunner show, which in fact, in the 1970s, it played on Saturday mornings. Come on, Kubrick.
Shout out to video cassettes.
So, and also Clockwork Orange, if we want to go into the fact that Alex, when he's performing Singing in the Rain, totally ADR, the fact they did it afterwards because his mouth isn't moving. The last name is inconsistent in Alex. When he goes to jail, they give him DeLarge, but then the newspaper article calls him Burgess. He comments that the opera singer's voice makes all the Malanky little hairs on his skin stand up when Malanky actually means little, so he's really saying little hairs stand up. I just think all these inconsistency guys, 2001.
Okay,
beats
here's the
yours.
thing with 2001, though.
Thank you, Brandon.
Let's take away the technical innovations of 2001. I know it's a big thing to do.
What?
Let's take
How
away.
can you take away
Let's
technical
take away
innovations
the
of that?
technical innovations.
Let's talk about
Let's
story.
take away the psychedelic
Let's
aspect.
take away the horror of The Shining.
Let's
Let's take away the villain of Clockwork Orange.
Let me say my point,
Sorry,
Stuart. Let's take all that away. What do you have? You have 1 hour of good story about man versus computer. The 2001
Dawn
is
of
too
Man?
vague,
The Dawn
too
of Man
boring,
sequence?
and it's confused. It doesn't know what
Dawn
it
of
wants
Man
to be about. The Dawn of Man sequence is awful. It does
Oh
not
my
work as a
gosh.
narrative in of
It's
itself,
showing the
while The
evolution of
Shining
man and the
does.
fact of
The
the
Shining would
monolithic
be an
is-
excellent thriller if it weren't for if the supernatural elements were taken out, if all the weird imagery was taken out. The Shining is an excellent claustrophobic Roman Polanski-like thriller.
So you mean if it was a horror movie, it would be horrific? Oh my gosh.
Fuck you. And in regards to A Clockwork Orange, while I do agree that
Rebels
it
on
does
the villain, I think.
the really horrifying stuff really well. It relies way too much on its main character. B, I think that The Shining builds up its tensions a lot better than Clockwork Orange
I would
does.
agree with
Because how
that.
Clockwork Orange is structured. Here's something shocking. Let's take a 20-minute nap. There's something even more shocking and jarring, and they're doing really wacky stuff. Now we're going to take a 20-minute nap. I think that The Shining has the ability to build up this really deep down, like, intellectual fear throughout the entire movie, and you stay on that level the entire time.
So
Clockwork
full on-
Orange.
oh,
Can I cut in?
Yeah, go
Can
ahead, sorry.
Clockwork Orange has the most consistent narrative of the films presented. While all
I don't
great
agree with
films,
that at all.
I believe that. Well, let's talk about this. The main character of 2001 is less interesting than a computer. The computer
Well,
is
there's
the
actually
most
multiple
interesting
main
character.
characters in 2001. Actually,
Well,
it
the
bounces
main-
around.
the main character of
story arcs.
2001 is us as a species, and that fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's not a great
No,
narrative.
it is. It's a narrative in terms of like we are the people being represented in terms of our evolutionary stance. It goes from like us in the Dawn of Man sequence to like literally touching this monolith, which gives us the ability to use tools, and that editing shot, that edit shot when he throws the bone in the air and it cuts to the spaceship, signifying that we've jumped way past in time to like how far we've gone as a species just by like this monolith that extraterrestrial beings have put down. Also, I'm going to say that when Alex and that one woman is fighting in the farm and there's a room full of cats, during the fight, the camera pans and there are no cats. So I deserve an explanation.
Why there's no
Just-
cats?
See,
Why there's no
Stewart's
cats?
over here doing these really,
During the
really
job
small bits
interview-
because he doesn't have an argument.
That's true.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. Like we picked all really good films.
did.
I think that I'm gonna say during the job interview when Ullman tells Jack that there is no skiing in the area, but in the first aerial shot of the hotel to the left, a ski lift is shown. Come on, people. I think if Kubrick's a perfectionist, he really nailed it down in 2001. We have this again. I'm gonna go back to the technical effect innovation. There was nothing like this before. We want to talk about like the floating pen in the air, the way they did that. The fact that he's running up around this this gravity, artificial gravity like spaceship, or like when they're in space in general, like the sets that they built for this movie, the story about it, what we go from A to B to C in the evolutionary arc, and how basically
I would say that
commentary on-
2001 has a great atmosphere, whereas you have
Great
a
movie.
film. Yeah, but with a
Also,
fil-
the whole
a f-
movie
with a
takes
film
place
like
in the atmosphere, so you're saying the movie's
right.
great.
With a film like Clockwork Orange, you have a consistent, uncomfortable atmosphere the entire time. There is not a single moment that you're watching that film that you're not fully engaged into it, actively involved with the plot. You're following the characters, and you're just uncomfortable because you are as subject to Alex DeLarge as the characters in the.
And
in
I'll
the
say
film.
the exact same thing about The Shining. Jack Torrance holds you captive this entire film. Jack Nicholson is terrifying.
That movie marvels in the performance of Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall, not in the technical standards of Stanley Kubrick.
What?
Yes,
That
I
is
agree.
just.
I think
what about
that
the camera work? What about going down those
the camera
carpets?
work, 2001 is much better camera work than The Shining does. And he did that movie like, 20, 30 years after 2001? I think that every good aspect you have in 2001, Kubrick did it better. Shining 2001.
Before we start our 30-second conclusions, I just want to say in the 60-second intros when Stuart's going like bum 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 bum, I'm looking over him like, yeah, this is my president. Yeah, this is this man is in charge of the club. Yeah.
Thanks, man. I
You're
appreciate that.
you're welcome, Stuart. We'll go back. We'll start with Brandon, go Stuart, and then finish with Jacob.
Okay, so The Shining tells an incredibly smart, tight narrative with horror and supernatural elements. It actually has a narrative, unlike 2001, and it does a terrific aspect far better than Clockwork Orange because there's a mounting tension, unlike a Clockwork Orange where it's flashy explosions of violence and depravity, and then it just goes away for a few minutes. It's a lot more consistent, it's a lot more smartly constructed, and it's a lot better. Camera work's incredible. What crack are you on?
The sun and the crescent moon aligned with each other in the opening shot was a symbol of Zoroastrianism, an ancient Persian religion that predated Buddhism and Christianity and was based on the teachings of the prophet Zoroaster, also known as Zarathustra. The particular alignment symbolized the eternal struggle between light and darkness. Appropriately enough, the famous 2001: A Space Odyssey theme is from Thus Spoke Zarathustra, a symphonic poem from Richard Strauss, based on the book by Friedrich Nietzsche, I can't say his last name, which contained his famous declaration, God is dead, which goes into the end of the movie when Dave literally becomes a star baby god, the evolutionary standard of human.
Alrighty. Clockwork Orange depicts one of the greatest character transformation of all time. You see Alex Delarge, who is a small-time punk that eventually gets converted by society, but then eventually that conversion is what leads to his downfall, essentially leading that same society and the privatization of politicians to use him as a figurehead to bring him back to the same status he was at. While I agree that the other films are great, I feel like this is the most consistent plot of it. It doesn't revel in a lot of Kubrick's things where he will fancy on the art of things or the image of things. It is a consistent story that follows one character throughout its journey, and it's an incredible journey.
Okay.
Oh my
We all
god.
picked great movies, can I just say that?
Yeah.
Like, Kubrick is a masterpiece.
Oh,
master
absolutely.
Any facts to check, Vaughn?
No.
Hey.
Hey, how about that?
Anything you're just beyond? I don't want you to feel like I just like you for the facts.
I feel the suspense because I really want to know who's about to win.
So do I. So do I.
I do have a fact throw in there, but I want to wait till after your ruling because it might affect your decision. But
Oh, yeah.
Let's see.
Fair
Anyone have any thoughts that they want to share?
anyone says
I feel like throwing up.
you are fired.
Any thought?
Just saying.
Oh gosh.
You cannot be fired.
You feel like throwing up?
Yes.
You're fired.
This is a disputation.
Oh, gosh.
Mark,
Do I
Don't
have to
feel-
pick today?
don't feel pressured.
Yeah.
I don't envy your position right now.
Okay. Do we do cliffhangers, Stuart? I feel like we could really.
You'll
do
find out.
After the break. Sponsored by Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew. It's the dew of the forest.
the dew of the.
You got it.
Welcome back to Cardinal Film Fights 2017.
And we'll be back.
And we'll be right back. Oh, welcome to American Idol.
We're trying to stall for you, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I really do. Okay, just gotta do it. Just gotta do it. This is gonna be the hardest news I ever told someone, and I had to tell my parents I was going into theater.
Best joke of the night,
Dead
ladies and
Poets
gentlemen.
Society.
No. For any theater majors who are watching, we do great work. Theater is very important. It is the essence of humanity. Everyone here was in theater. Just saying. But yeah,
True.
just no. Sorry. Self-deprecating joke. Okay. I've made my decision.
Okay.
First place of the Stanley Kubrick category.
Damn it, Mark.
Category goes to Stuart. Second place
I'm not gonna get on my seat.
of the best Kubrick film goes to Brandon.
Okay.
Good job.
And third place to Jacob. Oh, guys, it was.
Can I
it
throw my
was,
fact out? 'Cause I
Yeah,
wanna
go
wait.
ahead. Throw your.
2001's the only one he won an Oscar for special effects.
So there you go. Oh, there you go.
The more you know.
So yeah, guys, it's literally like this close, and if it looks like I'm holding my hands at the same level, it's because I am, because it was that close. Okay, I'm giving it to Stuart.
Good.
As I very.
Why?
You want- yeah. Oh yeah.
Not
I'm
fired.
supposed to explain that. Yeah. I'm giving it to Stuart because I think he did the best in showing that. Because I feel like what you all established is that Kubrick really prided himself on on his art and his technicality, and I feel like Stuart made a great case in saying that that was best exemplified in 2001: Space Odyssey. Brandon, I think you had a great argument in saying that, you know, if you took away the artistic side, you still had a great story and a great camera shots and everything. But that I think Stuart hit you a little bit with saying that that's is largely due in part to Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson's performance.
Which he brought out of them, but
Yeah,
that was
which he
baiting
brought out
against
of
you.
him, yes,
Yeah.
but in that, it lessened it just to me. It lessened his own impact on that slightly.
Yeah.
And then Jacob, I feel like yes, your plot is the most consistent, and it is like a movie plot, but also it does have those lags in it. It does the most exciting parts of the movie aren't happening at all times. It does have it's exciting, iconic imagery, followed by parts that, while important to the plot, aren't necessarily the exemplary work of Stanley Kubrick 100% of the time.
Improvised scene, though. The
The
man of 100
improvised
takes,
scene,
and there's
I
an
know,
improvised
every
The
time-
scene.
improvised song. The scene wasn't improvised. He just started singing in the rain.
Yeah.
Which kind of
Strangelove
ruined
had a lot
singing
of
for the
improv.
in the rain for me. It's like, ooh, it's like, can I sing?
Which,
this?
I mean, when he heard that cut, he actually bought the copyright to Singing in the Rain because that take was just so good. So he bought
Yeah.
the take from Gene Kelly.
Okay.
Let me tell you though, I've been in this room for an hour and I'm exhausted.
I am exhausted.
I am exhausted
too.
too.
This
I am-
is-
great.
We all picked great picks
Yeah.
for everything.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes.
Nobody picked Barry Lyndon for Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, that would have been awful.
Little Lolita.
Yeah.
So, to recap, the final results are Stuart in first place, Brandon in second,
Okay.
Jacob in third.
What are you going to do?
Wow.
So,
Real deal loses.
thank you all.
I lost
for-
my streak.
Yeah.
That's the thing. How am I gonna look at my show in the eye tomorrow when I have to go to the taping? I'm like, came in second. So yeah, Stuart Elmore is nothing to me anymore. I'm not talking to him. I'm going right out of this studio.
I
once
was
the
going to give you
cameras-
guys time for a plug at the end of the show, but
No,
I guess.
I mean, I love.
Brandon, can we still be friends, though?
Yeah,
Okay, we can
yeah.
still be friends. Cool.
Well, if we're doing plugs, we'll
Yeah,
start
should-
getting-
let's
Oh.
go ahead and give them some plugs.
And
today.
don't worry, I'll be expecting eggs on my window at 12 o'clock tonight.
Alrighty, if it's time for plug time, please check out BSU and I. I'm the executive producer. We have a great production going on. It's in Studio A every other week. Meet at 5:45 in Letterman Lobby. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, all the known social medias, and all the information is there. It's a fun late night comedy show, completely student produced, and it's a lot of fun. Come out and be part of our studio.
What's your
audience.
guys' main outlet?
Our main outlet, we distribute through Cardinal Vision, but also we put up our episodes through YouTube. So subscribe to us on YouTube.
Okay, so The Real Deal. We are an entertainment news show, again, completely student produced. I don't know how to talk. Our main outlet is our TV show, which we film weekly. It is released on Sunday every week, and our Jesus, I am tired. So we have our YouTube page where our show is released, and we also have our website, realdealbsu.com, where you can catch articles, reviews, opinion pieces, web-exclusive filmed content. And so, yeah, subscribe to us on YouTube at The Real Deals. Follow us on Facebook at The Real Deal. Follow us on Twitter, Real Deal BSU. Instagram, Real Deal BSU. And I think that's it.
Yeah, for the 100 views though, I think we get every video. Check these guys out, please. Like,
Oh,
they do
absolutely,
awesome
please
stuff.
do.
So, yeah.
Okay. And thank you all, Jacob, Stewart, and Brandon, for an excellent fight. I think this was the most debate fight. Like you were like,
yeah.
oh, indubitably, yeah. It's quite- now I must come back with a rebuttal. but no, it was very, very well structured and professional, and there was like no lags or anything. So like, you all do your jobs very well. If you got any questions or certain topics you want us to debate, leave us a comment or tell us on our website. And remember to hit that subscribe button. And if you like today's fight, share us on social media. I'm Mark Rollins.